the tourism industry is the one single largest industry in the country with 1.3 million employees, providing for 3 million Israelis. The last time we had such a drop in tourism was during the Second Intifada. The Second Intifada broke out in the fall of the year 2000 and really lingered until 2005. And tourism was suffering a great deal then. So the tourism sector in Israel is one of the lifelines of the nation, and it was hit hard and deep, far, as you say in America, far and wide. And we don't know the scope of the devastation yet, but we do know that in the last 8 years, Israeli incoming tourism, I'm talking now about foreign tourists, incoming tourism to Israel went up every year. So every year was a record-breaking year for 8 consecutive years, and that ended abruptly with the COVID-19. Now, Israel was not hit hard by the virus. When you look at how countries coped and handled the virus, Israel was actually in a pretty good place because harsh measures were enacted and taken early on.
Yeah.
So maybe that will impact the pace of the recovery from the crisis. But we went from nearly 100% capacity to nearly zero capacity almost overnight. And of course, you look at a country like Spain, where 30% of Spain's economy is dependent upon tourism, or France. France is entertaining 80 million tourists a year, or Italy, that was hit hard by COVID-19. So when we look at those places, we feel better about our own problems because there are other places with much bigger problems.
JNF is doing is it going to help? It seems like it's such a small drop in the bucket.
Yeah, so first of all, several things to be said. The first is that the JNF is unique. It's the only non-political organization that is all about Israel. So every dollar that they raise goes to Israel. It's very unique.
What about Hadassah or some of those other organizations?
Yeah, it's true, but Hadassah is, yeah, you're right. Hadassah and Vitzo and those organizations are also Israel-centered. But JNF doesn't have that many branches. They really, it's all about Israel. And
right.
So that's the first thing to be said. The second thing is that the organization experienced tremendous growth in the last 20 years, which is a direct result of their decision to focus on environmental infrastructure in Israel. And now they're branching out into education and lifestyle and leisure culture and so on. But once it became clear that the land was redeemed, now we have to take care of the land. Then all of a sudden the organization became more appealing to a younger audience and so on. So what they're doing is actually helping Israel strengthen the brand. Let me explain what does it mean. When you do a blind test, when let's say Pepsi versus Coke, every blind test that was done, the participants always preferred Pepsi over Coke because Pepsi was sweeter. But when Coke decided in 1985 to introduce the new Coke, which was like Pepsi, more sweeter, people rejected it because it was not about the product, it was about the brand. What does it mean? It means it's about my emotional association with that which the product represents. The brand is much bigger than the product. So in the case of Coca-Cola, the brand was the driver, right? In the case of Israel, it's the same thing because Israel had many barriers over the years for incoming tourism. For example, terrorism, the security situation. For many years, it was difficult. Not many airlines were flying to Israel in the 1960s and 1970s. The only American airline that used to fly here was TWA. And so there were many, many barriers, but it was always the brand that was the driver of the relationship. When people were buying Israel bonds, they were buying, the brand. They weren't investing in a real product. When
Yeah.
Israel bonds started in 1951, Israel had no economy. We had no industry. We had no export. So what was it that people were investing in? They were investing in the brand, in the promise. So that's what I think, that's the uniqueness of what they did. When you engage in virtual tourism, just like esports, just like distant learning, that's the way technology is allowing you to experience the brand. And what may start as a very humble project could very well become the new way people will travel. Because you have to understand, as long as there will be no vaccine, um, the very notion of travel safety is going to be fundamentally altered. Just as 9/11 changed the way we travel, so COVID-19 will change the way we travel. COVID-19 will change mass gatherings, will change sporting events, entertainment events, concerts, and so on. So I think that what the JNF is doing is very pioneering. And the idea that the tour guides in Israel will benefit from it is a wonderful idea.
Yeah, it really is. Um, so back to tour guides. How is the tour people that are in, not just tour guides, but how are the people in Israel that rely on the tourist dollars or tourist shekels coping?
Well, right now, the situation is very bad. The Israeli tourism industry is recovering. I should say that when you look at the Israeli market, when you go out, like I did today, I went to do some shopping. It seems like everything is normal. So people still wear the masks. Some people maintain social distancing, but I would say restaurants are open. The sporting leagues are beginning to resume activity and so on. So I would say the country is about 90% back to normal. So, but
Wow.
the driver the driver of the tourism industry right now in Israel is domestic tourism. Let me give you an example. We have, for July and August, 250% booking rate for the hotels in Eilat. 250, which means for every room they sold, there's going to
Yeah,
be one and a half people that are not going to get the room that they reserved. Overbooking,
crazy.
hysterical overbooking, and it's happening because Israelis, um, many of them, most Israelis, live in small apartments, and they were stuck in those apartments for months, which is probably same thing that is happening in the United States. I'm sure that part of this wave of violence and riots and frustration, it has to do with the frustration, with the anxiety. And I think it goes beyond that particular incident that happened in Minneapolis. It was just a trigger for something much bigger, but that's my opinion. In any event, um, Israelis that were confined to their homes are eager to travel, and they're traveling in a very big way. So they go up to the Galilee, they go up to the Negev. So the tourism industry is beginning to recover. My brother is a tour guide, and he's telling me that he's already getting bookings back. Next week he's going to start giving frontal presentations next week.
So the Israelis are utilizing the tour. I mean, like, so if say somebody from Tel Aviv or the Negev wanted to go to Jerusalem, they would hire tour. Are you saying that the tour guides are being booked domestically, like
Yes.
actually?
So is in Israel, the system is slightly different when Israelis travel with their tour guide in a bus in a much larger groups. So, for example, it's highly unlikely that an Israeli family will hire an Israeli tour guide to take them in his or her private car to Jerusalem. It usually doesn't happen. What happens is that tour guides and tourism companies are offering, let's say, a tour of Jerusalem, Old City, and then people sign up. So the tour
Gotcha.
can be much, 50, 60 people sometimes.
Okay. Okay. Um, that makes sense. So are there, tell me about the borders now. Like, when are foreigner, I mean, like, I know my next door neighbor is Israeli and his mom is sick, but he can't get in yet. So
We
what's
could,
going on?
if Israelis can, but they have to be self-quarantined for 2 weeks.
Okay, that's still going
Non-Israelis are not allowed in.
on. Okay.
Now,
Um,
Israel, one of the reasons we were not hit hard is because very few people enter Israel um, via ground travel. So the only way to enter Israel for tourists is either air travel or by sea, because our borders, we have an open border with Jordan, we have an open border with Egypt, but very few tourists are coming through the border by car. So it's not like you're in Atlanta, you can decide that you're going to drive to Miami, and you can do it.
mhm.
This scenario doesn't exist here. If you live in Turkey and you wanted to come and visit Israel, you can't. You can't just hop, get into your car and drive from Istanbul to Israel. It's impossible. So so that was one of the reasons I think we were not hit as hard as other countries. That travel, which is the number one agent of the pandemic, is very limited to Israel in absolute terms.
Well, also, I mean, you started the 14-day quarantine immediately too,
Yeah,
which
yeah. And also
kept,
the government announced the pink code, not pink, code purple, which is a regulatory code that hotels and restaurants have to abide by, and it's actually working.
what is
So
that?
it's a visible thing that there's certain things you have to do in hygiene, and you have to sterilize everything, and you have to maintain social distancing. It's called Code Purple, and it's the government stamp of approval for businesses, including hotels and restaurants.
So, I mean, there's an actual like sticker or something on doors or?
Yeah, let me see if I can find it online. Uh,
I can do that too.
um, in Hebrew, do you speak Hebrew?
Not very well. When I'm in Israel, it comes back, but not in Atlanta.
Okay, in Hebrew, it's called the Tava Sagol, the purple code, or uh,
I got it. Code purple.
you
No,
got
that's
it.
not. No, that's not it.
The purple code for COVID-19 in Israel. Uh, Israeli government approved updated guidelines. Anyhow, we can find it in Hebrew. You will
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
find it. In Hebrew, you will definitely find it. Hatav Hasagol. Let me see if I can find it in Hebrew.
Hatava. Okay.
Um, Hatav Hasagol. Hold on, I'll find it in Hebrew. It's important because I think it's Israel's one of the first countries to come up with such a thing. It's a standard.
I think I
Yeah.
found some.
Um, so here it is. That's it. You, can you see it?
Oh, yes.
That's it.
Okay, I got it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's the logo.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I have another call in 6 minutes. So
Okay, all right. So let's see what else I can do. So as regarding foreign tourists, has the government discussed when and what precautions it'll take when they start allowing tourists back,
Yeah,
foreign tourists?
that was not decided yet. I don't think it will happen in the next several weeks, mostly because of what's happening with other countries. So Israeli government is dealing with other governments in the region, but these are mostly governments where the tourism balance favors them. In other words, Greece, Cyprus, these are countries, more Israelis travel to Greece than vice versa.
Right.
Now, Israelis are in very high demand because COVID-19 was not hit hard, it did not hit hard, but also Israelis are very good travelers. They're big spenders. So they fly to Turkey, to Greece, to Cyprus, they spend a lot of money, and the locals love them. And so right now we're talking to governments in the Mediterranean basin, but we haven't started talking to the governments of the nations that bring the tourists in. So number one, of course, is the United States, but we get a lot of tourists from Russia, we get a lot of tourists from Ukraine, Germany. We get a lot of tourists from Nigeria, from Brazil, from Korea. We're beginning, before COVID-19, we saw a surge in the number of tourists coming from China. But mostly France, of course, many French Jews, people from the UK travel to Israel. But the big chunk of incoming tourism is the United States, and it's not going to happen, I think, for the next several months before Israel will open will allow travel from the United States in a big way.
Interesting.
That's
The
my
world is,
prediction. And I have no knowledge, it's just my prediction.
well, I mean, it makes sense, especially with what's going on right now in the United States. I mean, I have a feeling we're in for a big spike in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Not.
I don't know. I don't know what's the plan. I have no idea how this is going to unfold, especially now with the riots. The people were not keeping social distancing, and
At
we
all.
don't know a lot about this virus, but one thing we know: if you avoid, if you keep distance, you're not going to get it. That's
I
one
mean,
thing that we do know.
yeah, it makes sense. But all right, I'm going to let you go. Will you send me the recording, and then can I email you if I've got another question?
Yeah, sure, of course.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Bye bye.
All right. Have a great evening.
All right. You too. Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.